back to In the Ring with Termite and Mr. S. Mr. S, we got another good one.
We do. We got Randy Grimes with us today.
Randy,
NFL
good to
all
be-
time. What, Tampa Bay? You said
Tampa
10
Bay.
years.
That's right.
Yeah.
What are some of the other accolades?
Author, right? Had a great college career. Baylor Bear.
Baylor Bear.
I'm a Texas boy.
There you
Grew up in Tyler, Texas, Rose capital of the world. Me and Earl Campbell.
Yeah.
He was Tyler Rose. I was Tyler Thorne, I think.
There you go.
But drafted in the second round by the Buccaneers. Went out there, had a great career. Raised my family out there. Retired back in Houston, and here we are.
Yep.
Awesome. And you've got a story we're fixing to get into.
Yeah, I hope so.
You've got some ups and downs. You've been knocked down a few times, I hear.
Overcome.
Yes, sir.
He has overcome many of them. I've had the privilege of knowing him for some time now, and he's overcome one obstacle after another. And you've had some big obstacles.
Yeah, I have.
mean, you've been knocked down more than me.
Yeah, I'm my own worst enemy usually,
So Randy, tell us how you got started in football. Period. Yeah, I guess you were a kid.
Well, I mean, football.
You've never been little.
Football wasn't religion in my house. I mean, religion was religion, but it was a close second. And I had a dad who was a parole officer who should have been a coach. Because that's all he ever wanted to do was coach. He coached not only my teams growing up, but my brother's teams too. I had an older brother who was as good or better than I was at football. And, football was just something that we did. And it was something that came easy, not only for me, but for my brother. And it was something we loved to do as a family. My whole mom would turn out, my sister would turn out, my grandparents would turn out for games, and it was, just something we all shared.
So then you went to Baylor.
Went to Baylor, yeah. I was, like I said, born and raised up in Tyler, Texas, Robert E. Lee High School. Could have gone anywhere in the Southwest Conference that I wanted, but now it's the Big 12, but back then it was Southwest Conference and Arkansas, Texas Tech, or Texas, and I chose Baylor.
And that's where you met Lydia.
That's where
right?
I met Lydia, my wife, the very first day, our freshman year. We went out that night and got married after our junior year. I figured I better put a ring on that one.
Well,
and in a hurry.
I love you to death, but you stepped up.
Oh, yeah, I did. Yes, I did.
We both did.
Yeah.
And
married a preacher's daughter.
Yep. And it just happens to be my best friend's sister. And anyway, and Randy, I got to tell you, I'm gonna brag on you. You're big now, but you were bigger then.
Yeah.
And I remember we were bowling one night. You may remember this. Yeah, I was over here and you were right over here. We were side by side, and here this big man, massive, and he had chunked that ball and it. Wow! It was just, and he was huge. And do you remember that night in North Shore?
I remember, yeah. I don't remember all the details of it, but I remember that.
But thank you so much for coming on our show. We're gonna get down nitty gritty, dirty right now.
Yeah.
Okay, you help a lot of people because you've been where they're at.
Right.
Tell us how that went south.
Yeah.
Well, when I got to Tampa Bay, I had a locker right next to the great Leroy Selman. A lot of people, you remember Leroy Selman, one of the greatest players that ever played the game. Tampa Bay's first pick in '76 when the franchise started, and had a locker right next to him. And I can remember, this is even before training camp started, back when I first was drafted, going to mini camps, having conversations with him. And the first thing I learned from Leroy, and he taught me a lot about being a man, not only on the field, but off the field too. But the first thing I learned from Leroy was that football was not a game anymore. Now it was a job. And the second thing I learned from Leroy was you do whatever you have to stay out on that field, because if you're not out there in your position, somebody else was going to be. And you didn't ever want to get a reputation of always being injured, always being on the injury report, always in line to see the doctor, always back in the training room, missing practice. You didn't want to get that reputation, because that was a reputation you were never going to get away from in what was sure to be a short NFL career. So I'm sure Leroy didn't mean to take handfuls of pain pills every day to practice and play through the injuries that we had, but that's what I was willing to do. And you got to remember, I played back in an era where we used to beat the hell out of each other all week long.
Yeah.
You know, it was that old Bear Bryant junction boy mentality where if you don't practice hard, you're not going to play hard.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of the injuries that occurred to not only me and my teammates, but everybody was in practice.
Yeah.
And I never understood that. But, you know, that's what I was willing to. And listen, I justified it so easy. You know, I wanted to be the best center that ever played the game. You know, I wanted to be all pro. I wanted that next big contract. I wanted to feed my family. You know, these are ways.
Give yourself reasons.
Yeah, these are ways that I justified throwing down a handful of pills back then. And also I played in an era where that wasn't frowned upon that much.
That's
know?
what they did.
This is an era
yeah,
with the
yeah.
technology of the sports, the helmet padding I've seen between that many years ago. Padding was super thin in the helmets.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah. But
people were getting
just,
into it.
you know, I can remember after we play a home game at Tampa Stadium, and really even on a road trip on the plane home, but as we would leave the locker room after we dressed, after the game, with our keys in our hands, fixing to walk outside and meet our families who were waiting right outside the door, they would hand you a little white envelope that had 2 Percocet, 2 Halcyon, and they would hand you 2 beers as you were walking out the door with your car keys in your hand. But what other occupation, you know, has that mentality? And
Yeah.
only the NFL in the 70s, 80s, 90s, you know.
so, yeah, it kind of breeds that. I mean, how else do you not get sucked into that?
Right.
And when did your pro career, what year did you turn pro and what year did you?
I was drafted in 83, and my last year was 92.
Okay.
So 10 years.
Wow. That's a long time to get beat up.
And in that 10 years, I played for 5 different head coaches,
Wow.
6 different offensive line coaches, and 12 different quarterbacks, I think. As a center, you know, that's a big deal, is who's the quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah. And your whole deal was to protect them.
Protect them, right. Yeah. That's
Nobody-
what I got paid for anyway.
So did you enjoy knocking them down?
Oh, yeah.
Getting on-
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember some times where you'd stand over them, all that kind of stuff back in the
A little
day.
taunting.
Right.
Oh, wow. So what you once did and got addicted, and tell us how the addiction came.
Well, and you know, I didn't, although it was a full-blown addiction, I never called it that.
You never admitted it.
I never admitted it.
Yeah.
And, you know, the last 2 years of my career, this is what that necessary evil developed into. The last 2 years of my career, I was playing games in complete blackouts. You know, I'd be home late at night, laying on the couch, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night after a 1 o'clock game somewhere in the country or at home. And I'd start kind of coming out of it, you know, and I'd be all beat up and scratched up and fingernails torn up and dehydrated, everything you are after an NFL football game.
Yeah.
And I didn't remember any of it. And I was a starting center. Wow. You know, I was making audibles. I was changing blocking schemes. I was getting guys going in the right direction. I was having to listen to the quarterback to see if he was going to change the play, listen for the snap count, snap the ball. And I was doing it all in a blackout. And, you know, that's when I knew that I had crossed the line, and it was full-blown addiction.
Now, during this blackout, and I'm digging deep. A lot of it I already know the answers to, but your story is just so amazing. You're amazing, and we're leading up to what you're doing now.
Right.
But at its worst, I mean, when you were in the peak of your addiction, you're also having to raise kids and be a husband and go to church. And tell me about
Well,
that.
and I didn't do any of that very well. And, you know, I can still remember the last coach that I had, Sam Weish, putting his hand on my shoulder and saying that your services won't be needed out here anymore. And, you know, you think you're ready for it to be over. You think you're prepared for it. You think you've thought about it and made all these plans. But until it really happens, you don't know how you're going to react. And I didn't do well with that. I struggled for a long time after that, figuring out who I was when I didn't have the uniform anymore. You know, when I didn't have that playbook to look at or itinerary to go by. And, you know, when I retired and moved back to Houston, that's when it really got out of hand. And you know, I had a full blown addiction going. I had the injuries were just getting worse, so I needed more and more medication. Tolerance was just getting higher, so I needed more and more pills to get the same effect. And doctor shopping all over Houston, Texas was a full-time job. And the new normal in my life then was, you know, ambulance rides and hospital stays and detoxes and lost jobs and repoed cars. And, you know, because that's what addiction is.
People don't realize what we go through as athletes. You know, this man made tons of money. But you just said something I didn't know. Repoed cars. I've had repoed cars. And at my peak, when I was doing great in boxing, I also was at my worst. And wow. And you've overcome all of this. And now you're giving back.
Right.
Tell us what you're doing now.
Well, and you know, I can remember sitting at a picnic table in the middle of a rehab campus when I did get sober, and I got sober September 22nd, 2009, and I can remember thinking, you know, I've got to make this mean something. You know, I've left. Here I am out in West Palm Beach, Florida, at a rehab. My family's back in Houston, and I've got to make it mean something. I've left a huge wake of destruction with my reputation, my finances, my family, my friends, and I just got to make it mean something. Everything that I've put everybody through. And that was kind of the birth of Pro Athletes in Recovery then. I didn't know what I wanted to do with it, but I knew I wanted to make my addiction mean something. And I also knew, because when I came into treatment in 2009, there was nothing out there for former NFL players. And whoever my wife talked to the day that I finally put my hand up and asked for help, whoever she talked to that day up in New York knew somebody who knew somebody, and that's how I got to West Palm Beach. But I knew there was a lot of guys out there that I'd played with and against who
People
were
in the
struggling.
shadows. Everybody just in the shadows at that point.
Well, suffering in silence, you know, either because of pride,
Wow,
ego,
suffering
guilt,
in
shame,
silence.
you know.
Wow.
Usually it's the way we were raised by
Yeah,
our
just keep-
dads.
yep, just
Big
keep
boys
your
don't
mouth shut,
cry. You
make it
rub
happen.
Rub some dirt on it and get back in there, you know. But once I started going out, and this is way after I'd worked on myself for a long time, and that's a whole other story in itself. You know, I finally had to grieve the death of Randy Grimes, the football player, and reinvent myself. But once I started going out, I went to the NFL. We formed a division called the Player Care Foundation, and we got it funded by the NFL. So these guys that had lost everything, their insurance, everything, there was a way to pay for that. But we started going out and sharing my story, and guys were coming out of the woodwork, you know. And I've been able to help hundreds and hundreds of former NFL players, and it was so successful that Major League Baseball got involved, and
So you've kind of
NHL,
crossed
NBA,
over different divisions.
every sport you can think of that has an organization that supports their former players. The Jockeys Guild, HISA, which is Horse Racing Integrity Safety Authority, PGA, the LPGA, MMA. You know, I've been able to work with that. It's funny how God picked this way to keep me connected to a game that I love so much. And I often think back, you know, was he just preparing me all those years for the work that I do now? Because, you know, I used to think football was life and death, but no, this is.
Yeah. So Randy, if people, let's say there's an athlete that wouldn't go to his people, and he's
And it doesn't have to be an athlete to be anybody.
You're
Yeah,
exactly right. Let's say there's a person that is getting real reserved, pulling away because they've got this addiction, and they're wanting to quit, but they don't know what to do. How can they contact a Randy Grimes? How can they get in touch with your services?
Man, if you can't find me, you're not looking very hard, because I'm on all social medias.
All the time.
All the time. But I have a website. It's called proathletesinrecovery.org. Or you can go to the book website, which is offcenterthebook.com, and find me. But I am everywhere, man. And I've tried to make it as easy as possible to raise your hand and ask for help, because that in itself is hard enough.
He doesn't raise his hand and ask for help, but I'm going to raise my hand and ask for help. If you're out there and you got some money, help this organization, because it's helping so many people that are in such dire need.
Yeah.
And Randy may be the only link to helping so many of the people. So if you're out there, help this man. You got the money, you got the funds, you got the resources. Help this man help other people.
And my message is simple, and it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
But you got to raise your hand and ask for help. And help is available. There's hope out there. You know, families struggle so much because they don't know who to call or what to say when they're trying to deal with a loved one that's either, whether it's addiction or mental health. Usually it's both.
Yeah.
But there's so much stigma also that surrounds this disease. And that alone keeps people from raising their hand, you know? And
the shame
it
of it.
shouldn't be like that. I think it's gotten better over the last 5 or 6 years. There's been more celebrities, athletes come out and say, hey, they're struggling with
It's okay to be not okay.
It's okay to not be
look
okay.
what you're doing. I mean, that's exactly what you're doing. It's gotten better because of you. And of course, we want to keep supporting you in any way we can and get the people to supporting you. Randy, our whole theme is about getting knocked down and getting back up and never quitting, overcoming.
Persevering. Keep on going.
Persevering, you know.
Tell us some of your worst times.
Oh, man.
And,
most of them were in addiction, you know.
Yeah.
Of course, I had some sports things that didn't always go the way I wanted them to on the football field, but...
Let me stop you right there. Injury-wise, how... I know you've had some injuries.
Right.
One or two.
Yeah, right. Recently had both knees replaced. One of them was a redo from 14 years ago. This one.
Wow.
And when they replaced my knees, my ankle screwed up because it changed my gait. So now I've got ankle problems. But, you know, for the most part, I came out of 10 years in the NFL without any back injuries, without any neck injuries. As far as I know, my brain's okay for right now.
Well,
anyway.
there's a question there. So would you do it again?
In a heartbeat.
And,
There's a lot of things I would change, but I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, people ask me, would you go back in the ring in a heartbeat?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you've brought a lot of enjoyment on the field to people that you paid a price for. And now you've paid a price to help so many other people. You know, just in conversations like this, you become more of a hero to me, seeing what you're doing. And I thank you so much. Is there anything you want to promote? Oh, hold on, let me back up. Let me stop. Okay. Your wife. Mm-hmm. I've known her since we were kids. You know,
Lydia.
Lydia, she's like a sister to me. I love the whole Brady family. She's one of the heroes.
She is the hero of my story.
And I admire you for saying that.
She'll be the first to tell you that she wanted to leave me through all that, but God wouldn't let her.
Yeah.
And thank God she hung in there, you know, and kept our family together. She basically put our kids through college by herself. Yeah. And like I said, she's the hero.
Incredible. You think we could get her to be on here?
Yeah.
I think
you
should be
have
good.
a hard time shutting her up, though. Don't get her talking about me, though.
Is there anything you want to promote?
Tell us about your book.
Oh, yeah.
I want to hear more about that.
And
what brought you to write it? When did you write it?
Yeah, 2 years ago it came out. Matter of fact, it was at the Super Bowl. We were out in, where were we?
2 years Super Bowl?
Los Angeles. And that's when it came out. We wrote the book. Me and Lydia wanted to do something to heal our family.
Okay.
You know, so that's all the book started out being
purpose.
as a platform for our kids. You know, for my brother, my sister, her brothers.
It's like a biography / healing.
Yeah, and we wanted everybody to have a platform in it and just kind of share what they went through with my addiction. And little did we know that it would be such a popular book. It's helped so many families, and yeah, if you go through the book, she's the hero all the way through, and she really is. But I'm really proud of the way it turned out. We've been at the Super Bowl the last 15 consecutive years, ever since I've gotten sober, and we'll be going out to Vegas here soon again. And what I do is I go out there and I promote the work that I do with the NFL, with really just athletes in recovery. But again, it's back to that. We're just trying to tear down that stigma that surrounds addiction and keeps people from asking for help.
Yeah. If they wanted to get this book, how would they do it?
offcenterthebook.com, or just go to Amazon, look up Randy Grimes, and Off Center the book will come up.
Awesome. We should have brought one. We should have.
We
showed
should.
it.
I just had one in my hand, too. I should have
Yeah.
brought it.
We'll have
We'll
it.
blame it on you.
Okay.
We'll put it on the screen, and
Good, good.
so it'll pop up there.
Okay.
So, what's next for Randy Grimes?
I just continue to do this work every day. We're in the middle of a worldwide epidemic with drug overdoses and fentanyl, and doctors are so quick to throw a prescription at everything out there, but we're losing an entire generation of young people right before our eyes, and we've got to do something to stop that.
Yeah.
And if it's not fentanyl, it's something else. And even the marijuana that's out there now. This is not the same stuff that when we were
No.
growing up.
No,
the
they
stuff
lace
is
it.
and it's genetically engineered. It's so potent, and if there's any underlying mental illness going on with somebody, that's just going to make it worse.
Yeah.
And that's what's
Exaggerates it.
going on with a lot out there. So we're just trying to get the word out that there's hope and help, but you got to raise your hand and ask for help and educate as many people as we can about this disease.
Do you see common themes? Obviously, yours from an athlete, you had injuries, you had pain,
Right.
you had to work through that for your responsibility. Do you see other themes of why people get hooked on? Is there a common theme, or maybe it's just everybody has their own reason?
Oh, I think there's a ton of reasons. Of course, the pandemic didn't help anything, with
Kind of the
COVID
isolation.
and isolation and all that. The one thing we tell people not to do is what they were telling us to do.
Isolate.
And that's isolate.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot more mental health issues out there, whether it's caused by social media or whatever, Kids are different now than they used to be, and they handle things different. Parents raise kids different than we were raised,
Yeah.
And so there's all kinds of things that are going on. There's more availability to substances. You can get on Snapchat and have something delivered to your flower bed in 5 minutes. It's just that available now, and it's a quick out for people.
Yeah.
It's a quick way to escape. They don't want to feel like they feel
That's
anymore.
it. It's an escape.
It's an escape.
Speaking of kids, tell us about your kids.
Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of my kids. My daughter Emily married a
Gorgeous.
former Major League Baseball player. They live right here in Kingwood.
Who's been on this show?
They've been on this show, and she's got her nonprofit down in Panama. I'm really proud of her. For the One International.
Stunning, gorgeous.
Yeah, she's got 6 different feeding centers down in the San Blas Islands, and that's her passion. That's her baby. Garrett is also, he's in on that. And then my son lives in Rwanda. Well, he did live in Rwanda.
Yeah.
He had an electric motorcycle company over there, but he's recently moved to Malaysia. Matter of fact, at Christmas. So they're living in a high rise there on an island in Malaysia, and me and Lydia will be going out there soon.
It's
Might not
adventurous.
come back either.
Yeah, it sounds fun.
Yeah, it's not Kingwood anymore, but I'm excited for him too. He does a lot of. I'm really proud. We've got 4 grandchildren and 1 on the way.
Wow.
And
Congratulations.
love those grandbabies.
And I'm sure they all have their own stories of you and how that impacted their lives. and
Well,
maybe their calling.
one of them was around for that for sure. Hudson, and yeah.
He's a big.
Hopefully the other ones don't remember. They were too young then.
Well, Randy, Mr. S.
I've been impressed by this. I encourage everybody to go get the book if you're dealing with
get the book.
things.
Get the book.
Thank you. Yeah.
And go to athletes and
proathletesinrecovery.org. And then you can find me, on Twitter or X, all that stuff. You can find me at Sober Center 60, Facebook, Instagram.
I'll get a list from you, and we'll put them all in at the bottom. when
Okay.
we
I'll
post
send it
this.
to you.
And I want to tell you, if you got resources out there, support this group. It's a well ran organization, And
Coach
it's well-
Ditka is involved with us. He's behind us. Coach Jackie Sherrill, Coach Taff. We've got a lot of big name, great men of God.
That's awesome. We thank you so
Thank
much.
you
and
very
we
much.
wish you the best.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks
And-
for coming on. Thanks
Thanks
for
for
what you
having
do.
me.
We
Yes,
end our
sir.
show.
You're right here in the neighborhood too. I like
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Convenient.
it. Yeah.
So let's
Let's wrap it up.
We join we end ours with keeping your guard up.
Life's tough.
Okay.
We
We
say
want to
keep
tell
your guard
people.
up.
Ready?
We look at the camera. And
Is that
keep
what
your
we
guard
do?
up. Yeah,
Yep,
we look
you
at the
just keep your
camera
guard
and just
up
tell them
and-
keep your guard up.
Keep your guard up, guys.